January was, without a doubt, the most exciting month of transfers in the history of the Canadian Premier League. Every team was involved in massive moves across the board, as basically every single team in the Canadian Premier League found either ways to improve their team or sell off promising players to other leagues. So I'm going to jump right into this one because there are a lot of guys I need to talk about. This time we're going to go team by team just because there's so many guys. We're going to start off with the team that's probably the busiest in January, York United. York United, of course, with the new Mexican ownership coming into this season, is trying to establish themselves in the Toronto sports scene, and they are making a ton of transfers to do it. First off, they've brought in Juan Cordova. Cordova, the Chilean/Canadian fullback, made 2 appearances for the Canadian national team back in 2017, including one in the 2017 Gold Cup, and he's spent pretty much his entire career up to this point in the Chilean National League. 7 years of experience in the Chilean top flight, Cordova now comes to Canada to play in the CPL for the first time, coming to play with York United. A very solid addition, as Cordova could easily step in and be one of the top fullbacks in the league, and a very good ad for York United. But the good ads don't stop there, as they also brought in Canadian international center back Frank Stirring. Stirring had 2 appearances for the Canadian national team back in 2021 in the early stages of the qualifiers for the 2022 World Cup, scoring a goal in one of those 2 appearances. He has spent the last 2 seasons at SV Horn in the Austrian Bundesliga and has established himself as a pretty solid center back. A dual Dutch-Canadian citizen, he also made appearances for several Dutch youth teams growing up as a kid, and now coming to the Canadian Premier League, he is just another massive addition for York, a guy who has the capabilities to be one of the better defenders in the Canadian Premier League. The backline bolstering did not end there, as the Mexican influence came in to get Oswaldo Leon to York. The 24-year-old Mexican former youth international center back has made 82 appearances in the Mexican second tier over the past 5 years. Another massive addition for York United, and a very solid international center back coming into the Canadian Premier League. The combo of Leon and Stirring gives York what could be one of the best center back combos in the Canadian Premier League, and just from the eye test is a massive improvement over what they had last season. Add in Juan Cordova and the back line has been completely revitalized at York. In addition to those 3, they've also brought in Mexican U23 midfielders Orlando Botello and Josua Martinez, 2 exciting young midfielders who could develop very well for York United and prove to be very useful players for York United. And also they've brought in 27-year-old Liechtenstein winger Denis Solanovic, who has made 57 appearances for the Liechtenstein national team over his career. Mostly recently, he played in the Spanish third tier. He's a very interesting winger signing for York United, and he could be a very solid addition in the Canadian Premier League. Staying in Ontario, we're moving on to Atletico Ottawa. The biggest move by far that Atletico Ottawa made this month was bringing back Balou Tabla. Tabla was massive for Ottawa in the 2022 season, and he earned a move to the Turkish second tier with that performance. Scoring one of the goals of the year, was nominated for Player of the Year, was a finalist for Players Player of the Year. Tabla was incredible in 2022 for Atletico Ottawa, and losing him is a massive part as to why they took a step down last season. Bringing him back on a multi-year deal means Ottawa is back with Tabla. The Tabla-Bassett offense combination was the best in the league in 2022 for Atletico Ottawa, and while Bassett was great in 2023, it always felt like they were missing something, and they've got it back with Tabla. In addition to Tabla, they've also bolstered the wings, bringing in Chris Twardek. Chris Twardek is a 26-year-old Canadian winger, 1 appearance for the Canadian national team back in 2017. He's been a bit of a Euro hopper his career, most recently spending the last 2 seasons with Bohemians in the League of Ireland. Solid winger, a guy who has potential to be a very high-quality player in the Canadian Premier League. Another big addition on the wing for Ottawa. However, it wasn't all signings for Ottawa, as they also sold Yanni Dos Santos to Inter Kashi in the Indian second tier. Just something to bring up, as it kind of more establishes where the Canadian Premier League stands in the global football market. On to the Halifax Wanderers. I only really want to talk about one move for the Wanderers so far from January. Callum Watson was sold to Chattanooga FC in MLS Next Pro. Another CPL player going to MLS Next Pro. However, unlike other CPL players who have moved to MLS Next Pro, Chattanooga FC is not a direct MLS farm team. It's actually an independent team that's starting up in MLS Next Pro this season. So a bit of a different path for Callum Wilson. It'll be very interesting to see how that turns out for him, and just a player to keep an eye on just to see what happens to CPL players who move to independent teams in MLS Next Pro. The last of the Eastern block of teams in the Canadian Premier League, Forge FC. First, Rezart Rama left to KF Ignatia in the Albanian top flight. Rama, Albanian Greek international from Albania, came to Forge FC for the 2022 season, and he'd just been an elite fullback in the Canadian Premier League for the past 2 seasons. Losing him is going to leave a massive hole in the Forge lineup, and one that has not yet been patched in time for the team's CONCACAF Champions Cup run. But good on Rama using the CPL to get himself back to Europe into the top flight in Albania. The other big move for Forge was an incoming transfer. Eliman Cisse is back. The Senegalese midfielder who was a big part of the 2019 to 2021 Forge team, spent the last 2 years, one in Morocco, one in Senegal, playing in the top flights of those countries respectively. He is now back in the Canadian Premier League, back with Forge FC, a massive addition to the Forge midfield, as he was just a very solid player in his whole time in the Canadian Premier League, and him being back at Forge makes the midfield that much better. 2 moves for Valour FC I want to talk about. The first off is them signing Jordi Swibel. Swibel is an Australian striker from the Australian second tier. A Valour team that is in desperate need of attacking talent is looking abroad, looking to Australia to bring in Jordi Swibel. Another interesting signing, we'll see if he's able to help this Valour offense find it this season, and they're probably hoping for a bit of Australian magic up front like Cavalry had with Jesse Daly last season. The other move they had was selling forward Pacific Nyongabare to the Tampa Bay Rowdies, so a CPL to USL championship move, which what seems like a transfer fee paid. So good piece of business there from Valour. One move of note for Cavalry FC, but it is a pretty big one for CPL fans. Tobias Warszewski has signed with Cavalry FC. The former FC Edmonton striker scored notably a bicycle kick in the opening game of the 2022 season, was always a very solid striker of FC Edmonton, and scored a lot of goals for a very bad team. So Warszewski now finally gets an opportunity after taking a year off from professional football last year, finally gets an opportunity to come to a high quality team in the Canadian Premier League. He is a guy who, with proper talent around him, if he gets fed the ball like he was in Edmonton, he could end up well up in the Golden Boot race and could potentially win a CPL Golden Boot this season. Big signing for Cavalry. Warszewski is probably going to tear it up there. Vancouver FC is getting serious this season. They've brought in David Norman Jr. Cavalry fans know this guy's good. CPL fans as a whole know this guy is good. A massive part of Cavalry's teams in 2021 and 2022. David Norman Jr. split time between Northampton Town at the end of the 2022-2023 season in the English League 2, helping them win promotion to the English League 1, and with St. Patrick's Athletic in the Northern Irish League. Back in the Canadian Premier League with his hometown Vancouver FC, David Norman Jr. instantly elevates the level of stability with this Vancouver team centrally. He's going to be a big piece for Vancouver this season, and a massive get for a young team. And finally, the moves for Pacific FC. Mostly outgoing moves for Pacific FC this month. First off, we have Easton Ongaro moving to Novara FC in the Italian 3rd division. Now, Ongaro, this is his second move to Europe. The big striker, previously following the 2021 season, moved for 2022 to UTA Arad in the Romanian league, but then he ended up coming back, spending some time with the Vancouver Whitecaps 2 in MLS Next Pro, and then landing last season with Pacific FC. Now he is going back to Europe, and fingers crossed this time it sticks. This is a good move for him, and hopefully he can break in and get regular minutes in Europe this time around. The other move is Kieran Basket going to Brattvag in the Norwegian 3rd tier. Basket was a promising young goalie for the HFX Wanderers, came over to Pacific FC, still a promising young goaltender, however was passed up in the depth chart by an even more promising, even more young goaltender in Emil Gazdov. And it seems like Pacific knows that this season it's not as feasible to run a 1-2 punch in net. They're going to fully give it to Gazdov this season. I mean, he deserves it, and Kieran Basket was the odd man out. He gets a move to Europe, albeit in the Norwegian third tier. It'll be interesting to see how Basket's career plays out from this point, but this is potential for him to move up through the Norwegian ranks and possibly through the European ranks, just getting some exposure over there. So overall, a solid move for him. The incoming move for Pacific FC this month was Victoria native Dario Zanata coming back home to Pacific. The former Vancouver Whitecaps Academy player spent the last 9 or so years bouncing around between the Scottish second and third tiers. A forward, he's another guy that has the potential to be a solid player in the Canadian Premier League, and a hometown boy for Victoria. You know he's going to want to show it up for Pacific FC. He hopefully will be a solid player for Pacific this season, and another piece in an already strong offense that already has Saloof killing it. So there you have it. That is all the major transfers just from January. There still is 2 more months of CPL offseason to come, and a lot of teams still have not made a lot of moves. A lot of teams still have a lot of holes they need to fix. So a lot more is going to transpire this CPL offseason, but already, just from where we are right now, this has been the most exciting CPL offseason ever. And the Manny Aparicio sweepstakes haven't even been settled yet. So that is for this video. As always, if you'd like to hit like, if you want to see more of my stuff, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, link is down below in the description, and I will see you next time.